Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collins, and joining me, as always, Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing all right. We've had a couple of playoff series since our last show. We'll be discussing them in a minute. We do also have some Flyers news. It'll probably take up a lot of the first half. Before we dive into it, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. Search You Would Think Podcast. We'll pop right up. We're trying to grow over there. Follow us on Twitter at YWT Podcast. Follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. All right, so where do you want to start here? Obviously, we're starting with the Flyers. Do we want to start with do we want to start with the most recent news? I feel like it's the freshest kind of in the mind. The
Whatever
comments made by
you steer the ship, I'll just go wherever you decide to go.
Okay. It happened a couple of days ago. I've been thinking a lot about the comments from Danny Briere, surrounding Carter Hart.
Yep.
And the general gist of it is the fact that he's not calling anybody. He's not exactly knocking on doors and shopping Carter Hart, but he has expressed a willingness to, if someone makes a call, he's willing to listen. Have you heard anything? Is there any rumble of anything? Or is this just kind of Danny Briere leaving the door open?
No, I think that this is Danny Briere continuing the PR tour, so to speak. I mean, everybody has been speaking in just total abundance at this point. I mean, you've got Keith Jones doing appearances. Eventually,
crazy.
Like crazy, but also then popping onto TNT and still doing the games on top of it.
That's the part that I think is crazy. The fact, when is the last time you saw somebody get hired for a job with a team? Really, honestly, it doesn't matter the job, but you leave your media job. Like, that's how this works.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean,
and for the record, I'm not knocking him. No. I mean, positive he is doing it, completely conflict free. He is a fantastic broadcaster, as evidenced by his 20+ years in the industry.
Yeah, and you know what? Here's the thing: is he doing it probably, objectively and conflict free? Sure, he is. I think.
As conflict free as Jonesy ever is. Let's be honest. He's a heart on his sleeve kind of guy.
Sure, but I also sit there and I look and I go, you know what? Listen. There's always an advantage to broadcasting in any form. I mean, to me, it's a little bit like if they take a guy whose team is no longer in the playoffs and say, you can join the panel this week. Like John Cooper was on TNT's panel for one of the nights, right? Does that not give you, I'm not saying it's a competitive edge because his team season was over. That's why he's on it. But at the same time, you're kind of in a way doing homework, right? Like,
absolutely.
You're still watching two other teams and going, oh yeah, like I'm breaking it down, but I'm watching it, and he's a coach. He's going to watch it with a coach's eye. There's no way he's not, right? So I don't see any difference in Keith Jones getting in between the benches and kind of, let's this way. To me, that's even that's taking homework a step further because you're not only experiencing the game, but you're experiencing it at player level.
A little on the bench tampering.
Well, no, I wouldn't go that far.
No, absolutely not. Like that.
But I do think that you're definitely picking up on. There's things you're going to be picking up on there because it's the way that, again, you're kind of watching it the way a coach would to an extent. And I'm not saying that he was ever going to be the coaching type, but you pick up on little things and you're watching a lot and you're doing. So I don't have a problem with it in the world, but
I don't have a problem with that.
Oh, I know it is weird. I will say that it is a little strange.
Weird.
Well, you know what? It was in the very beginning and then it became very normal again really quick.
Sure, because it's Jonesy and that's what he does. Like he's just
exactly.
He makes you feel at ease just really honestly without effort. He just seems like the easiest guy in the world. Anybody on planet Earth could saddle up next to him in a bar stool and just start talking about life.
Which is why they're rolling him out the way they are. Because
absolutely.
You look, if you're trying to get a message across, then you like we said this last show, you could do a lot worse than Keith Jones to start with because these broadcaster types seem to, they're just good communicators. They just are. So
sure,
that's a great place to begin with it. So in the case of Danny Briere going on, and this was on WIP, by the way, I don't think there's anything to it right now because, to be honest, I think if there was anything to anything out there right now, we'd be hearing a whole lot more about it than what we do right now. Like,
fair.
There's what there's a lot to right now. There's a lot to coaching vacancies. There's a lot to GM vacancies. That's piling up right now.
Oh yeah.
Player movement, not right now. Like you get through the final, and,
half the league doesn't have a GM or a president of hockey ops or some important front office position that they're trying to not make moves.
No, but they are winding down really fast with some of this. I've seen a lot of rumors about a lot of places where people could be going. I know that there was a couple of coaching hires that were made.
Did you hear Mitch Marner to Carolina?
I didn't hear it. No, I didn't
really.
Talk
about that later.
I didn't really, and to be honest, stuff like that, I do not buy this early into the offseason because I think it's a lot of, let's just say, doesn't that feel like a little bit of an easy one to kind of just throw out there and stir the pot with? Like Carolina just got knocked out. Toronto is looking to shake up the core.
Especially when Toronto does not have a general manager yet. Now, it looks like it's going to be Brad Treliving, but we have no news as of the recording of this show.
Well, that's the thing, right? So you've got a bunch of moving parts where it's Brad Treliving could be going to Toronto. Kyle Dubas is probably in the running for Pittsburgh. Sounds like he might be at the top of that list.
Well, it certainly seems, the impression I've gotten from Elliot Friedman is via the 32 Thoughts podcast, not via personal text message or anything.
Your dreams, right?
Yeah. Elliot. Anyway, the impression you get listening to 32 Thoughts is that Kyle Dubas really wants the Ottawa Senators job, and he's waiting on them. And the Pittsburgh Penguins are waiting on Dubas. Essentially, is kind of where that log.
It's all over the map, isn't it?
If he doesn't go to Ottawa, he will likely end up in Pittsburgh. We're rooting for the Senators real hard because Kyle Dubas is a good GM.
And that's just general managers. I mean, the other one you have is Craig Conroy got hired in Calgary. That's done, finished. Already spoke. It's all done. He's the GM there. But then you've got coaching news that was coming out today too, because you have Washington's got a new coach. The Nashville thing was crazy today. Did you catch that one?
I did not. What happened? We were busy at work today.
Okay, so basically Barry Trotz, we talked about this before. Barry Trotz is taking over as the general manager in Nashville, right? Yeah, and Brian, Poyle is leaving. David Poyle's leaving.
Yeah, David Poyle stepping down.
Well, not leaving. He's going senior. Yeah, he's going senior, basically.
He's going the Bob Clark route.
Right, pretty much.
Listen, fair. But, I mean, he's been with that organization since literal day one. So
forever. So, kind of at random today, not only did, John Hines out, okay. And that's a little bit understood because you're switching top of the guard, so you can make a change. I get that.
But long after the season, though, I don't know.
Oh, hold on. It gets better.
You've known this was coming.
Not only is John Hines out, they already had the replacement. They've made the hire. It's done. And it's Andrew Brunette, which I actually think is a really solid hire for them for where they are and what could come of that. But all over the place. And by the way, I'm sure you've heard this one by now because this is a couple days in making, and Elliot had this already, I think. So, yeah, you obviously have heard who it sounds like is getting the Ranger job, right?
I think I missed that one.
Really? Okay.
It's Laviolette, isn't it?
Yes, it's Laviolette.
God, Peter, can you stay out of the Metro, please? For the love of holy cow!
So how many years until Peter Laviolette's coaching the Pittsburgh Penguins, and we all have a laugh about what happened with Bilesma?
You're not wrong.
You know what?
And after that, you might as well go to Carolina.
Well, he already did.
Back to Carolina.
Yeah,
right.
So back? Okay.
No, they weren't in the Metro when he was there the first time.
Well, that's true, but people are counting that anyway. And he coached the Islanders for, a cup of coffee too. So, right? So you got Islanders, Hurricanes, Flyers, Capitals, Rangers. There's not many more left.
What is it? Pittsburgh, the Devils.
And then I think that's it.
Is that it? Oh my God. Columbus. Okay. Peter, listen, we get it. You like I-95. Holy.
Yeah, no kidding. He doesn't like I-95. He likes taking Amtrak up and down to wherever he can go. I mean, you just need Amtrak to get to all these places, don't you?
Peter likes Wawa.
That's true.
So anyway, back to the Flyers.
To the Carter Hart
the Flyers were one of the first teams to kind of lock in their general manager. So they
actually, yeah.
Well, right. So theoretically, they're kind of sitting on the front end. They're ahead of the game in terms of their moves. I'm sure they've already done a little bit of feeling around.
Yeah.
If there is any feeling around to be done, and we all kind of expect there to be.
We expect there to be with players that we suspect aren't going to last much longer. So. Yeah.
Well, and I don't know. I think we see at least one big piece move this summer, whether it's
I don't know
Provorov or Konechny or
and I honestly
Hart.
wouldn't know what to expect. Like that's what I'm saying. Everything should be on the table and be discussed, and it should be everything. Everybody should be open to everything.
Very few players are off the table completely.
You're just not gonna know much until it's gonna. By this point, it's a little less than a month from now, but it's not that much. I'm not saying much sooner than that, to be honest, because you're gonna come up on the last possible day of the Stanley Cup Final is June 19th.
Right.
And then the draft is the 28th and 29th. So, and then free agency is July 1st. So the gap between all of this is very minimal.
It's going to be a busy 2 weeks.
Probably going to be a really busy 2 weeks. Exactly.
Yeah. It's going to be a busy 2 weeks for everybody covering hockey.
But I just think it's really, I just think that this whole concept, because I just think that this is a topic that was not blown out of proportion, but it was made such a big deal when it was like I've been saying this for a while anyway, that you don't actively shop Carter Hart per se, but you also don't turn people away and be like, he's untouchable. There's no such thing on this roster as an untouchable. Unless you are 21-year-old Tyson Forster or something like that. I can understand not trading Tyson Forster and saying, well, we're going to wait and see what he has. But you don't look at anybody else and say, I'm turning everything away for nothing. If it's a good offer, you have to entertain those.
I definitely agree.
And people aren't coming for the obvious, right? People aren't coming for Owen Tippett per se. I think people realize or Noah Cates, people realize while they're on an entry level deal that they're easy to sign and they're affordable, and it's
we have gotten that messaging from Danny Briere. It does seem to be a message of he is making it known that his phone line is open.
Sure,
he's not calling anybody. Great. But also that I don't think there's a whole lot of untouchables. So,
but here's the one thing about that to an extent, because there's a lot of different directions that this conversation goes. Because first, you get the people who say, "Are you crazy? Don't do it," because and that instantly point to the topic we're going to get into for the rest of the show down the line, which is the Stanley Cup Final, and immediately point to one particular goaltender on one of those two teams. I think you can figure out which one, and talk about him being a member of the Philadelphia Flyers at one point in time, and immediately immediately go down that path. Then you have people who sit there and say, forget mentioning that particular goaltender. Just go, are you crazy? He's 24. What are you doing that for? Or are you crazy? He's your best player. Then there's others who sit there and go, well, he's not that good anyway, right? There's every sort of avenue.
It's also just very different from the last time the Flyers traded one of these goalies. That team was ready to win. Or they thought they were. This team is very not, and they kind of know it. So it's a little bit of a different animal trading a guy who's 24, and you can theoretically there are some asterisks in the Carter Hart trade that we can get into if you'd like. But there are some things that affect his trade value. But other than that, his trade value is about the highest. You're looking at a guy who is making under $5 million for another year, and then is under team control after that, is still only 24 years old. This is the kind of asset that if you make available, other GMs want. Just plain and simple. We're talking about an above-average goalie here.
Sure, and a goalie who's capable of starting in bulk, and I get that.
And a guy who has taken Canada to gold at World Juniors, as marred as that may be.
Well, exactly, and that's one. And sure, listen, that's one piece of it that makes him tough to trade right now, because there are teams that are skeptical of that.
It's probably really the biggest thing. Yeah,
it is. But you know what? Sometimes goalies don't produce the value you think they're going to just because you think they're the most desired commodity. The right answer for most teams when it comes to goalies is, did I draft enough of them, and which one stood out the most later on? You know what I mean? It's not I signed one. It's not I signed one. It's not I traded for one.
That's fair.
It's did I draft?
Did I develop one?
And the key, the biggest example of all of that is you just scour around certain areas. Is you can sit there and you can go, ask both teams in New York how they feel about that process.
Fair
in
enough.
a way. I mean, and look, this is a question mark. But I'm bringing it up anyway because it is a drafted goalie. Ask Pittsburgh. Actually, ask Pittsburgh in every key goaltender they've had. in the last 15, 20 years.
Fair enough.
Because from Fleury to Murray to Tristan Jarry, it's like, okay, you've got all these guys who you eventually worked your way through. And by the way, let's not forget that the other goalie in Pittsburgh was also, we'll kind of tie this in a little bit, was also at World Championships for Team USA and looked pretty darn good throughout. Yep. So it's like, you may have somebody there. And again, that's another one who you just, you worked with them through the process. You didn't just happen upon him. You didn't just, strike gold in free agency or in a trade or something like that. So we don't see this very often. And even most of the winning goaltenders over the last several years, maybe not in Colorado last year because that was a different case, but Andrei Vasilevsky, drafted and developed. You think of Jonathan Quick, drafted and developed, at least
Corey
in
Crawford.
LA. Corey Crawford was, you can go down that whole list and get there, and guess what? Even in crazy situations, like, okay, Martin Brodeur is another one too, drafted and developed, right? But
even over the last decade or so, Connor Hellebuck, Carey Price, like all guys who just kind of came up through the same system.
Even think of like the most substantial goalie trade you can probably think of, and Patrick Waugh going from Montreal to Colorado. Was it a big deal? Like, it's a big deal newsworthy wise, but did he get traded for high value? No, he wanted out. So they had no leverage.
Yeah, he sure did. He very publicly wanted out.
So
he told the owner he was leaving, period.
So just because Colorado got a Stanley Cup, a Hall of Fame goaltender who then won 2 Stanley Cups with them, doesn't mean that it sends the team that traded him back substantial value. It usually, honestly, I think the hardest part about goaltending in the NHL, at least from building the position, is you have 2 goalies on your roster, or at least in your starting lineup every night, or on your bench every night, and only 1 net.
Fair.
And most of them want the spotlight. And if they're not going to get the spotlight in one spot, then they will try their hand somewhere else. But it doesn't always work out that way, because sometimes those years of sitting around doing nothing and kind of back, if you're the guy who's backing up Andrei Vasilevsky for 55, 60 starts.
Brian Elliott had a sweet gig this year. Come on.
Well, he did, but it's different if you're the younger guy.
That's fair.
If you're the guy who, after playing all this time in juniors or internationally or in the minors or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're told park it because the other guy's that good.
Brian Elliott's hanging out at the local Margaritaville.
And Brian Elliott's sitting there trying to do one thing and one thing only, especially when playoff time rolls around, and that's win.
Yep. Absolutely.
Like I just saw it pop up a few seconds ago about, okay, Sergei Bobrovsky's the one who's running the show in Florida right now. How do you think Alex Lyon feels? And there's an article about it, so I know
the guy who saved the season. Yeah.
Right, but how do you think he feels right now while he's not playing? He's going,
well, that's what I'm saying, right.
He's sitting here going, this might be one of the best runs I've ever seen from any goalie, anytime, anywhere. And he's the one just sitting on the bench high-fiving people at the end of the day because he's 4 wins away from a Stanley Cup.
Absolutely.
And didn't do anything more than play the first 3 games of the first series. That's it.
He also single-handedly dragged
he got
them
in. I'm not
Come
saying
on
that,
now. Don't discredit Alex Lyon.
No, but for the actual playoff run, especially beyond the first round when everybody thought they were going to lose.
That's fair.
It's all Bobrovsky beyond that point.
But I guarantee you ask every guy on that team and we'd go, well, we're not here without him.
Oh, no. I'm not discounting that at all. But I'm saying the guy who sits on the bench and collects the ring at the end of the day doesn't care.
So back to the Flyers. If you're Danny Briere.
Yes.
And you have access to the 32 GM WhatsApp chat, how aggressively are you sliding into DMs to get rid of Carter Hart here? Like, are you aggressively shopping him? Are you putting out feelers? Are you just not pushing the issue at all and waiting for somebody to come to you? Like, where are you at on this?
Okay, and this is one of the avenues I was talking about, because there's also this thought process of, because I guess the language of the whole thing is not actively shopping but listening,
right? And
which kind of implies your last portion of what you were asking me, which is, are you just kind of?
It seems like that's what the Flyers are doing, at least from a public
with your offer,
right.
And that's a little bit the right way to do it, because no, you're not actively shopping him. I mean, Briere led the whole thing with, we see him as our franchise goalie, but I have to listen.
Right.
That's the position we're in. I don't think Briere needs to text anybody about the situation the team's in. I think it's well known. So I don't think he needs to explain it to anybody.
I think you text Kevin Adams.
Well, here's the thing. Do you sit there and just bide your time and try to let everybody come to you? Probably not. But maybe and maybe that's the direction you're talking about. Maybe you text a guy and just try to put feelers out about what would you offer.
Detroit? Oof.
Detroit's tricky because of Husso, and they just inked him for a little while.
Yeah, but they were not thrilled with the goaltending performance they got.
Oh, I'm not saying they should be.
Yeah.
Well,
and Nedeljkovic was not good.
I don't know what happened there, by the way, because, man, was he good in Carolina? I guess it's the defense, right? You don't play behind that structure. I guess you're not as good. It
might just be goalies are weird, man. You never know.
Go to a different place, and it's weird. I guess, yeah, I don't know. I mean, listen, the other ones that you're going to hear a ton about over the next, especially, you bring Carter Hart into it, you bring goaltending into it, you're going to hear Edmonton a lot, especially, I mean, Edmonton seems obvious, not just because they have goalie questions, but for God's sakes, it's his hometown.
Stuart Skinner was good this year.
I don't think you do it. I don't think Edmonton does it, to be honest. Edmonton doesn't have a need to. Edmonton doesn't need, like, if Skinner continues to progressively get better, they don't need goaltending. They now need better defense.
Right.
To be honest. And I praised Evan Bouchard to death over the course of their playoff run because I think he's also going to be one who gets better as he gets more experience. But we also know what we kind of know how we feel about the Darnell Nurse contract, and we know how we feel about kind of the rest of that defensive group. And it's like, you got some work to do there.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting offseason for them for sure.
I heard Toronto a little bit too, by the way. I heard Toronto's popping
up. That's definitely
or at least as a suggestion, which of course is being brought up as a suggestion. But like,
how ironic would it be? They're going to do everything they can to jettison the Matt Murray contract.
Probably, but you got to be careful about that.
How interesting would that be?
But you got to be very careful if you're on Danny Briere's side of all this for what you take on. If you're looking to shed salary, be careful, and if you're looking to,
I think the number is fairly similar to Carter Hart. It's just the term on it.
I thought it was a little bit more than Hart.
I'm looking it up.
Murray's was pretty. I thought Murray's was pretty rough.
I thought it was around 5. I thought
it is, but Hart's is still below 4 technically. So
okay, Matt Murray has one more year left. This upcoming season at 6.25.
Yeah, I can't go there
for 1 year on a team that's tanking and theoretically clearing cap space. And you're getting rid of Hart's, almost 5. I'm assuming in a swap here.
Well, and Hart's contract up too, and I don't know.
But he's Listen, if Toronto is going to make another kick at the can with the Big Four, and Brendan Shanahan has apparently told them that he would like to see all of them back, which is insane, but whatever. If they're making another kick at the can with this same core, then they're going to need some goaltending help. And
you know what? I'll tell you what.
And they're also a team that's looking to trim a little salary. So that's a deal that makes a lot of sense for them, and you can drive the value up.
Yeah, then I'll tell you what. What's the offer back? If you're taking that contract on, then what else is in the offer?
So what if
you're throwing something pretty juicy in there? Then yeah, okay, I'll listen a little more. But like the concept of swapping the 2 out is not appealing to me at all.
Carter Hart and the Flyers' 2nd round pick next year for Matt Murray.
Yeah.
I just had the name and I lost it. Matt Murray and Nick Robertson.
I'd rather have picks than players, honestly.
I get it, just from based on where the team is at.
You know what?
But I think Nick Robertson slides into
the
this
fact.
nicely.
The fact that you went, I'm not disagreeing with you. That would be a nice player to slot in and see how it works. But I'll tell you what, the fact that you even went to a 2nd rounder right away, the team that doesn't have one this year to begin with, let's ship off the next year's you know what? If Danny Briere would be doing the right thing by listening on offers for Carter Hart, because you can't be committed to anybody on this roster right now beyond the next year or 2 at this point, grand scheme of things. I know there's other players that obviously are, but like, you get the point. If everybody is, if there's no such thing as an untouchable on this roster and you have to listen, then I would hope that the other side of the message that provides is we're not looking to trade draft picks just to sweeten a deal for somebody else to get some, you know what that becomes if you do that, if you trade Carter Hart and a pick just to help them get Matt Murray off the books for that last year. Okay. That becomes kind of indirectly Danny Briere saying exactly what Chuck Fletcher said, when they traded Zach McEwen to get the 5th round pick and said, oh, wait, you need to trade Brendan Lemieux first? Just throw him in. We'll help you. Like, that's, to me, that second rounder is will help you.
Okay. What if it's Carter Hart for Matt Murray and a first, or a Carter Hart and a 3rd or 4th for Matt Murray and a first?
The first interests me, and I would then be a little more open to it. I still don't like the idea of trading another pick with it, but
you know what I mean, something like that. Whether it's a prospect or
But you're shooting at. See, now you're shooting in the right direction. You want to throw like a top end pick in there, and I'm not saying a first round pick from Toronto is going to be. It's not going to be top 10. Let's be real, but
right. But a first round pick just still has value.
And who knows what kind of first round pick when it really is all said and done, because they could be a team that flounders again, first round exit, and it's top 20.
And they're the kind of team that if you get a pick in 2025 or 2026, who knows what that team's going to look like with all the contracts they have coming up. If they're stupid enough to trade a pick 3 years out, I mean, that's on them. But
sure, and but it's really, and because this is a thing, because I was on OMB podcast last week, and this came up a lot, but it was more about what would it take to trade back into the first round this year was kind of the question. It was right. The answer, and the answer is it's hard to construct trades right now, not in terms of where we are in the offseason, but in terms of you just don't have a lot. I mean, you don't have a lot to move yourself up. You have no seconds this year, so how do you get back into the first this year? You pretty much don't.
And that's why I think we're going to see a major piece move this year. I think Danny Briere is going to take a big piece, whether it's an Ivan Provorov or a Travis Konechny or even a Joel Farabee. Not that I want that to happen, but I think it could. And break that down into lots of smaller assets.
So
there's a cupboard that needs to be restocked.
Sure, and it's very complicated. It's going to be fascinating. There was something I was trying to think, because there was something I saw relatively recently that kind of had to do with, the idea that this is. I'm trying to think of the right words of how it was placed, because it wasn't geared toward, I guess it was geared toward the idea that there would be a lot of movement potentially, and maybe that's not what we mean by that. It's just a lot of what decisions are made are going to obviously be big, and there's a lot of them to make, and there certainly is a reason to believe that several players will not be back next year from the previous year. But the level of how much that happens, I think, is what is a little bit in question, because how much can you do in one offseason, especially when you're kind of brand new to the game and not trying to shortchange yourself on what guys are worth. So, that's the tricky part with a lot of this. And I think that's where we're going to have to really think about just a lot about where this team, not where this team is headed, because we know that answer pretty firmly, but more about what's the starting point for where they're trying to go, and how much needs to be accomplished in year one of this process and this plan. Maybe the answer is honestly not a lot, because you're shedding salary in a couple of areas by doing nothing. You're going to try to shed salary in some other ways, and maybe the rest of the answer is just riding it out for another year while players develop and seeing where it goes.
You're going to sign some guys in mid-August that didn't sign anywhere else, and then you're going to try to trade them at the deadline.
Yeah, potentially. Well, see, I'm countering that a little bit, because it's either you're going to do that to fill out your roster, or you're going to have a bunch of guys who you couldn't move even with one full year left, and you're going to play it out with them until you get to deadline time next year. But it's going to be the same guys, and that's going to be a little bit different than I think what people may be expecting. You almost have to table some of the movement. I think there's some, don't get me wrong, I think there's certain players, and I think we've talked enough about most of them at this point so people should know. There's certain players who I think you can suspect. I don't want to put a definite on anything, but will probably be moved simply because of the way that things went over the last 12 months in terms of the new, from the new coaching staff to now a new general manager in place, their own relationships within the room and within the organization itself, and maybe their desire to play for the organization. Some of those things are going to work themselves out. But
for example, the most notable name there is probably Kevin Hayes.
Well, and that's exactly where I'm going with it. And it feels like the writing's on the wall there. But There's certainly others, and I think Provorov and Konechny are good examples of this. There's certainly others where it's like, it doesn't have to happen this offseason. There's nothing that says it has to, and there's reason to believe it may go either way. You know, I wouldn't be shocked if they were gone at the end of by the end of the offseason and playing for somebody else. I also wouldn't be shocked if they're on the Flyers next season. You know, it's just not gonna you're not if they're so hardened upon the fact that they're going to tell you it's not going down to the studs, it's not going to go down to the studs, especially in year one. Now, you may be able to look at the end of the whole process and say, well, they kind of did tear it down to the studs, slowly but surely, but it's not going to be some big tear down. I'm just curious. The only thing I would be curious about is, how many times have we said addition by subtraction, right?
Right. Well, and I'm not necessarily...
What's the level of addition by subtraction?
Right. I'm not necessarily saying that they trade all of them, like you mentioned. I don't think they're stripping it down to the studs, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised if you see one of them go this summer.
I just can't see addition by subtraction being, well, okay, Kevin Hayes.
No, Hayes plus another. Hayes plus another.
Like to me, it's got to be. And I mean, listen, addition by subtraction also kind of qualifies for, as good of a pro as he was down the stretch. James Van Riemsdyk qualifies. You're not bringing him back. You're gaining cap space. It is what it is. But so I guess realistically speaking, I guess that's one. Kevin Hayes could be two. But is there anybody else? And is it somebody on the surface level that we kind of have speculated could be? Or does it go deeper where it's, know what? We're getting into the Provorov, Konechny, Hart, Farabee range, and it turns into something like that. Does it go that deep? We're going to find out together. That's kind of the thing that's kind of one of the things that bothers me a lot, because I got asked a question, or not asked a question. I got asked about my overall reaction on OMB. I got asked about what my reaction was to the Keith Jones hiring and to Danny Briere fully taking over as GM and all that stuff, and the press conference and all that. And we had done a show already by that point on it. So I mostly was repeating myself, but I said there should be two emotions or feelings that come right to the surface of this that every fan should be feeling, in my opinion. One is cautious optimism, and both words are very key to that phrase. The caution is you're never going to believe it's changed until you see it.
Yep.
But the optimism is the words are all different and the message is all different and it's all the same across the board. Even now, that's the point of what happened with Danny Briere.
And it's different people telling you. It's
sure,
new faces. Yeah.
I
think that's super important.
And that's the point of Danny Briere saying we're going to listen, right? Like, we have to. We don't have a choice. We have to. This is the position that he's in. Like, he's going, I'm in this position as GM and all of that. But I think if you say the word optimism, that immediately brings people out of the woodwork. Like, no, it's the same old, you're crazy, blah, blah, blah. You're just another one of the minions, running around.
Right.
And that bothers me a little bit, because I don't feel like it's the same thing. And if it turns out to be the same thing, you know what? We're going to call on it, right? Like we do with everything else. But it doesn't feel exactly the same as before. It did on the surface. The day that they announced who the two hirings were, it does feel the same. And then they start talking. Yep. And then they start talking, and they kind of outline the plan. And it was for a change.
They use ass in the press statement.
But they got up there as a group of five, and for the first time in several years, it was well thought out. It was prepared. Like, they actually went up there and were prepared for what was coming. Yep. We're going to talk. This is the message, and all that stuff like that. So that was the good part. The other part of the equation, and again, I think this is across the board, frustration. Frustration that it took so long to get here, because you've wasted valuable time that you could have been making this up. And you should be frustrated about it, but you got to approach the next chapter, the new era, with cautious optimism that these are the people who are willing to go the direction that the old regime didn't go, enter into the modern day NHL and build it differently. And you have to hope that they know what they're doing.
20, 30 years from now, I cannot wait to read Val Camillo's memoir. Oh, the stories that woman probably has, because she's probably the most stable face among that group of five. She's probably been there the longest.
in front office
in the actual office.
You're right.
She's seen the entire transition through, and honestly,
actually the only person who probably predates her, if you want to be very technical about it, which I guess I will be in this case, but it's not.
If you say Keith Jones, I'm smacking you.
No, I was going to say because before she came on board, I think Danny Briere was already doing the main Mariner stuff, and I guess in that regard, he kind of was in the inner circle already.
He wasn't at the Wells Fargo Center on a daily basis.
Not all the time, no, and that's why I'm saying if we're going by formal titles, she has the longest tenure of the formal titles.
Right.
Yep.
So we've been talking a lot about the guys who might go, the guys that might be available, what we might get for them. I kind of want to focus on some guys who, quite frankly, there's not a lot of them in this organization, but I want to talk about some guys who are untouchable.
Well, I guess as close as they can be, I guess, right?
No.
Okay.
These two names, rock solid, untouchable. I can tell you with almost absolute certainty that they're not going anywhere. Because at this point,
I have a counterpoint for one of them because I know what the two names are, but it's not going to happen this offseason for sure. You're right.
The two names that I'm talking about have made themselves a bit of a name recently at the World Championships, and I'm talking about Cutter the Show Gauthier and Scott Laughton, who I'm telling you, I don't know if anybody's wearing a C this year, and I know Tortorella said that, but he's changed his mind before. I don't know if they're going to put a C on this year. Scott Laughton's the captain of this hockey team.
De facto, yes, they're not going to put a C on him. I can promise you that, and I'll tell you why I can promise you that. Because then you don't run around and do this dog and pony show like they did, and Tortorella says, "Don't ask me the questions" and all that stuff. And then after all of that, by the way, because we get past that point, right? Past the point of don't ask me about a captain next year.
John Tortorella says that about everything. John Tortorella doesn't want you to ask him anything ever.
I know, but then they followed it up with the whole new era, and it's another year of that rebuilding phase. And so I don't see it actually happening in that particular case, because I actually think that in that case, I think he was right to say it. And
so if it
feels a little unfair to Laughton, who
if it happens. If it happens by Thanksgiving, you buy me a Scott Laughton 21C jersey for Christmas.
I guarantee it will not happen by Thanksgiving, but I'll take that. I feel like I can safely guarantee that. But either way, let's
remember this timestamp, folks.
There you go. Let's talk about. So speaking of Laughton, really quick, because Laughton was kind of almost an. It's kind of funny to me. He was almost a forgotten part of the whole tournament in a way, because there was a lot of
so Scott Laughton's career.
Well, it is a little bit, but so hear me out, and I'll explain kind of why I feel this way. Canada wasn't very good in the round robin portion in the group play tournament part of the World Championships, and USA was outstanding. USA won every game they played in the World Championship group play. So, and oh, by the way, while Cutter Gauthier is one of the leaders of the team at 19, so lots of attention there.
Crazy.
And Laughton's on a team that, I'm trying to remember who else they had lost to, but they lost a couple of games in the group round that was like, oh, okay, they beat Canada and they beat Canada. Like, you were getting some shockers for, the team that's able to usually send people over and all that type of stuff, right?
Right.
So Scott Laughton very quietly in 10 games played in the World Championships just put up 3 goals and 8 points. Quietly as an alternate captain, by the way.
Oh yeah, wearing a letter. I'm saying.
Wearing a letter, gets a gold medal, awesome stuff, right? Cool, good for him.
Fantastic for the guy.
And quite a reward at the end of the type of regular, of the NHL season that he had.
Quite frankly, if he's healthy, I expect Scott Laughton to be invited back to the World Championships next year.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised by that. I think,
unless asterisk he's traded to a playoff team. But again, I don't think that's likely.
Sure. And look, it's interesting because you're talking about a guy who in his NHL season is coming off of 18 goals and 43 points and was a career high across the board in all of these categories. And it's like, okay, that was, so, but good for him, especially, I believe he scored an empty netter in both the semifinal and then the championship as well. So to win the gold medal, like he's scoring the clinching goal.
We love that for Scott.
But doing it in a situation like, I know it's an empty net goal and it's kind of funny, like, right?
But that means his coach trusts him to be out there defensively.
Bingo. I was going to say, it means
Bang.
that you're protecting leads late in games. That's awesome.
And we've known that Scott Laughton is supremely responsible defensively. He's Sean Couturier's mini-me. Like we've we've known that about Scott Laughton for kind of a while. But
Sure.
it is really nice to see two guys kind of shining at the international level. I know the World Championships isn't the most prestigious tournament of the year.
And there were a lot of guys who didn't play. Yeah.
Of course. And, you don't, Austin Matthews isn't playing for Team USA. We're not mincing any words here. We know it feels a lot like the NIT.
A little
right?
bit.
It's not the NCAA tournament that the playoffs are, but you got the NIT going on in the background.
But there is still a lot of value if you're Cutter Gauthier at his age, going from your freshman year at BC to playing at this level, which is kind of almost like I would liken it to, it's like a free trial for an entry-level contract in a way, because it's as if they plucked you off of the BC roster and said, you're playing for the Flyers for the rest of the year because we signed you and you're playing here. And in 10 games, you get 7 goals and 9 points. Second in the tournament in goals scored, by the way. Not bad. You know, I think that's pretty darn good. And most of them were pretty solid goals. I mean, the kid's got a shot. We know that.
Right.
But what I was impressed by, and I mentioned this on OMB as well, he had a rush through the neutral zone in one of the games. I think it was the game they played against Sweden, the last game of group play where they went undefeated at that point and therefore took home the top spot in that group. He had a rush through the neutral zone where he hit another gear blue line to blue line, and it was like, ooh, okay, this is good. He can skate really well. Like, okay, and not that we didn't know that was a foundational element of his game, but it's a little different from watching him do it with BC and then or at World Juniors
zipping
and
by
then going,
grown men at the IIHF.
Well, the thing for me wasn't okay. Laughton kind of qualifies into this category as well, if you want to go here with this, but it was it's just something interesting to watch him on the ice playing a shift for the U.S. in the World Championships, and then the next shift they go. And Alex Tuck is going for it in the corner. It's like, oh, wait a minute. That's the type of teammates he's got? Like, this isn't just guys on his exact level drafted at the same time as he was, like in World Juniors.
There's real vets here. Yep.
Right. This is real veteran players who are going to be looking at him and going, oh,
and Alex Tuck was a star this year in Buffalo. Like, he was
very good. Absolutely. So, that's the whole thing. I think that this gives you somebody, like, to me, the most exciting part about what Cutter Gauthier did is that he's not going to be on the Flyers next year, at least not at the beginning. That he is going back to BC, that he is going to play another year there, that BC team, by the way, is going to be loaded.
Yep.
And, so what's going to happen next for him? He's going to play another college year, certainly try to shoot for a Frozen Four berth because they're going to be a good enough team to probably be involved.
Yep.
And I guarantee you we hear his name called when it comes time for World Juniors again, because he's going to still qualify. Yep. So we'll hear about him again probably, at the end of the calendar year this year when World Juniors roll around. He should be part of it again.
Yep, he's going to play a lot of international hockey hopefully over the next couple of years.
But it's just great to see and this is what you hope for, right? Like, you hope that this is the starting point where you got him 5th, you've got 7th this year. Is there another guy? Who knows? You may be tapping into the roster makeup of, one of his future teammates at Boston College could very well be the pick at 7. It very well could be. And if that's the case,
chemistry all year, baby.
Well, yeah, but you're going to be watching everybody should be at that point should be glued whenever BC's on TV. You should be watching for him, and then you'll be watching for whoever else they take if that's the direction. If that's the direction they go, they don't have to. But nonetheless, I thought that Oh, and by the way, the other part of it that was great, by the way, is again, these games were mostly on NHL Network throughout the course of it, and I'm watching that Sweden game again because I really didn't watch many of the games in full. I was kind of busy with some other stuff, all that stuff.
And again, not the most prestigious tournament. Let's be honest.
And also, it was. Oh, by the way, it was held in Finland and Latvia, so the games were at like 9:20 in the morning. Yeah. So they go out and they're starting to play Sweden, right? And it's 5 minutes into the game. They're on a power play, and I'm pretty sure he had 5 shots on goal 7 minutes into the game because all he did on the power play was shoot, to the point where Brian Engblom was doing color for the game. It was for whatever network. I guess it was TSN that was airing all this, and it was on NHL Network and all that stuff like that. And he at one point goes, they got to find somebody else who's willing to take a shot because it's all running through Gauthier right now. And
we love that.
it's just great to hear that they've got a player who is certainly not afraid of that part of it when he's open, and he's always in position to do it. And the only thing that you feel bad about is he had a great tournament individually. The team had a great tournament through group play, and then they got to the semis, and they were a minute and a half away from moving on.
Yep.
And it crumbled down at that point. They gave up the tying goal. It went to overtime. They lose in overtime there, so now they're not getting the gold or the silver. They got to play for the bronze. And then same thing. They were leading the game again. It wasn't quite last minute of regulation, but they still give up the tying goal, and then they lose it in overtime again. And Gauthier was on the ice for both of the overtime goals too, which was also unfortunate. Kind of, it wasn't necessarily his fault specifically on those goals, but it's also
never
3 on
being a -1 on that play.
It also doesn't help that it's 3-on-3 at that point for, a stretch of time. You're going to play pretty much an entire period at 3-on-3 until, assuming somebody gets, doesn't, I don't know how you assume somebody doesn't score during that time frame, but nonetheless, as you're playing that out, it's like, look, how things can happen at 3-on-3 where there's way more space and all it takes is one misstep somewhere and you're in trouble. And Gauthier had in the game against Germany in the semis, had a scoring chance in overtime, made a really good play, actually, because he was trying to kind of go through a defender's legs a little bit and disguise the shot really well. He probably just didn't get a lot on it, and it was low, and so it was kind of easy to brush aside. But it was still kind of a deceptive shot that had a little zip on it for where he was shooting from and through somebody. So he's got the chops, and, I guess the next thing, I guess the thing to get excited about is, so he's got some good chops, and he had a good shot in this tournament, and you saw him display the good shot. And we know Tyson Forster's got a really good shot. So you've got a few guys who can shoot that are going to be coming through here. And if they can be accurate shooters that deliver, that kind of consistency to their game, then they can be really good players and be foundational for this team moving forward. But you're a long way away from just establishing that, we're a long way away from Cutter Gauthier as a star, okay? But
fair enough.
But he had a very impressive showing on a international stage with players who were, I don't want to say twice his age because it's not quite that much, but
I'm sure there were some there.
But over 30. I mean,
there
were players over 30 that were there, and he played right along with them. So
absolutely, and he did look good. And speaking of international stages, I did also want to mention real quick that there was a little bit of news about the outdoor game schedule for next year. Those tend to get a pretty decent little international audience. There are some rumors floating around that involve basically an overnight, not so doubleheader, but kind of a back-to-back of outdoor games at MetLife Stadium, I believe it's called now. Where on night 1, 2 of the New York area teams will play, and then on Friday night, another 2 will play. I believe the lineup I saw was Friday night Rangers, Devils, Saturday night Islanders, Flyers, or something along those lines.
No, okay, so here's I actually kind of have more.
Okay, go for it.
I don't know the specifics of days or whatever it's going to be. It's all kind of up in the air. Nothing.
Right, and all of this is rumored, right?
Nothing formally announced, but the story is that it's going to be Flyers Devils one night and the 2 New York teams the other night, which is at least a change of pace because if you did Flyers Rangers again, it's a little repetitive. It's like doing Flyers Boston outdoors again. It's repetitive. Flyers Penguins outdoors again. It's repetitive.
Right. We want to see some new matchups.
You change. I mean, look, is it another outdoor game for the Flyers? And they've had a lot since its inception. Yes, and so have the Rangers. But getting the Islanders and the Devils involved is a good touch. Obviously, you're trying to keep it very close to the general area of where this is, and you're picking the 4 closest markets at that point. You're bringing Philly into it, New Jersey into it, and the 2 New York teams.
Right.
So certainly that qualifies.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So we'll wait and see when the formal announcement is made. Sure. I do think one thing that was interesting was that the reports of this came out not too long after the introductory press conference for the New Era stuff, where Val Camillo directly mentioned talking to Keith Jones about, we discussed the business side and the benefits of outdoor games, international games, what that does for everyone involved and with the league and all that stuff like that. Well, No kidding, you were talking about it the day before that press conference, and if this is out there, because it sounds like that's what the conversation was about. Are we going to take it outside again? And it sounds like they are. So
I wonder if Keith Jones knows anybody at the television networks who might have an influence on what teams play in outdoor games. I wonder. Anyway,
are we sure it's on TNT?
It doesn't matter. He knows people everywhere. He's worked for NBC for 20 years.
That's true.
TSN before that. The man knows everyone under the sun. We've talked about that. But
that's true.
All right. So now that we've talked about Keith Jones again and we've talked about him on the television side of things, can we finally talk about the playoffs?
Yes, we can. Finally talk about the playoffs.
We can finally talk about the playoffs. Okay.
Where would you like to start?
Let's start with the series, man, that had some of the best games I've seen in this playoff, but did ultimately go down as a sweep.
I can't wait to hear your comments on this then.
Well, first and foremost, I'll give a little spoiler here. I said on the last show that if the Florida Panthers won this series, I wasn't going to bet against them again, and then they swept the Carolina Hurricanes, so I'm picking the Carolina Panthers, or the Florida Panthers to win the Stanley Cup, just for the record.
I didn't think about that tongue twister, that
Carolina,
Florida Panthers.
The fact that that was the first time I did that is impressive.
Yeah.
So the Florida Panthers came in, and Rod Brind'Amour said it really well after Game 3. He comes out, and he basically throws his hands up and says, I don't know what to do. The guys are playing well. We're playing well offensively. We're playing well defensively. Our goalie is playing well. They're just getting one extra bounce. And he said after the series, he goes, this could easily have been 4 games the other way.
Right. Okay. So it's funny. I didn't anticipate starting here. It was the last thing I wrote down in my notes, but I guess I'll make it the first thing I talk about because Brind'Amour's comments after Game 4, because he said he basically also tried to say we didn't really get swept. I was there, but and he further.
As far as sweeps go, he's correct. It's 4 1-goal games, 3 of which went to overtime.
And that's so my point with this exactly was you didn't get swept? Yes, you did get swept. Was it an insanely close series? Absolutely. The goal total over the whole series was 10-6, and so you had 4 1-goal games. Could have easily been a sweep the other way, so I get it. I get what Rod Brind'Amour was trying to say. I don't think it came across in the best way because
the man's a hockey player.
And for the next 24 hours after the fact, all you had people sitting there saying I was there though, and it wasn't a sweep, or this, or I was there and this didn't really happen, or whatever.
And if you think he meant that literally, come on now.
Well, no, I know
you do. I know,
and that's why I even said I know exactly where he was trying to go with it, and he's right for where he was trying to go with it. But to say it the way that he did was probably not the best.
Yeah, he goes, "We didn't lose 4 games," and by
yeah,
that
you did.
Right, but by that he means we didn't lose 4 games. The Florida Panthers won 4 games, and they dragged it out of our hands, and he's not wrong. And, okay.
We could also start from the very beginning and sit there and say, well, really, it was at least a 5.5 game series or something like that.
There was a lot of hockey in this series.
A lot, and we almost had more. I mean, you were 3 seconds, basically 4 seconds away from more.
Yep. And that leads me to the fact that Matthew Tkachuk scores the game winner in Game 1.
Yep.
Scores the game winner in Game 2. Both of which just getting off the ice immediately. Incredible celebrations.
The bus in 10 thing was phenomenal.
Game 3, he assists on the game winner.
Mm-hmm.
And then Game 4, he scores with less than 5 seconds to go to put them up a goal. And that's the end of that.
Yeah.
Man. We sat here after the last round and said, I don't know who's winning the Conn Smythe and blah, blah, blah.
Well, I'm kind of tabling this a little.
Sergei Bobrovsky's been really good. Matthew Tkachuk's going to have to do something crazy to kind of get himself in the conversation here. And then Matthew Tkachuk did something crazy and got himself in the conversation here.
I know, and I'm tabling the conversation on this until we get to the final portion of the previewing the final more than the recaps.
Fair. That is fair.
But I definitely
save it for that.
I definitely have new perspective on that whole
too.
race. For sure. By the way, so I'll give you my thoughts on Tkachuk though, without going into the Conn Smythe conversation for you, because here's as simple as this of an explanation as you need for all about him. We sit
here on Tuesday night. Has he been sober since Wednesday night?
Since
they won Game 4.
Well, he was back on TNT on the NBA panel.
Right.
And,
I think that was Friday or Saturday night, though. So he definitely went out and had fun in the meantime.
He was having fun, but he didn't seem like he was having. He wasn't. I'm trying to think. He wasn't having Nikita Kucherov levels of fun.
That's fair. He wasn't having Ovi in the fountain fun.
Yeah, not well. You know why? Not yet.
Not yet. No, he knows. But man, I bet he was having some fun.
Anybody want to bet on that he's the biggest beauty to come out of like the post game when it comes to like if they finish this off?
Oh, he's coming out like Joe Burrow with a cigar clamped between his teeth, like
all over socials.
Absolutely. If he doesn't have a cigar in his mouth, I'm going to be extremely disappointed, and Keith's going to smack him.
So anyway, this guy's a league superstar. He's becoming a face of the league. He's more and more becoming a player you should market heavily.
And you mentioned it. He was on the TNT NBA panel. And that, even just for a night, he just showed up and had some fun with him. He wasn't like breaking down any serious basketball analysis. But
no, and the only look,
he's still rubbing shoulders with some of the biggest names in sports.
Now, in fairness, I think the only reason that actually ended up happening had more to do with it's Miami. So
sure.
It's the South Florida's vibing right now.
Well, and if you play for the Florida Panthers and you're going to go party, you're going to Miami. Come on now.
Well, and then the Miami Heat are doing what they're doing too, and you go, okay, it's a vibe right now.
Oh, Miami's going to be rocking.
Yeah. So
are those games going to be the same nights?
Not exact. I don't think they're exactly the same. I can check on the NBA schedule.
I was going to say, if there are any games in Florida on those nights, man, that Miami area is going to be rocking.
So let's
imagine if like game 6s are the same night and they both win the thing. Holy smokes, Miami burns down.
The NBA is not that crazy to put both together, but but you want some fun then?
Okay.
Because Miami is also the road team in the NBA Finals, right?
Right.
So you got games
That's why 3 and 4.
So games 1 and 2. So game 3 of the NBA Finals is on June 7th. Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final is on June 8th. Game 4 of the NBA Final is June 9th. Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Final is June 10th.
Imagine being season ticket holder to both and just 4 nights in a row you got
And
games.
Then, by the way, if it goes 6, June 15th is Thursday, June 16th is Friday. There's your 2 game 6s.
That's it. Yeah. That's it. Panthers and 6. Heat and 6.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about this series a little bit more.
Sure. Well, first of all, by the way, so what was your prediction on this one before going in? I know
I had the Carolina Hurricanes. I had Carolina Hurricanes in 5.
You said Carolina in 5, right?
I thought they were, quite frankly, I thought the Magic was going to run out.
Okay, I had Carolina in 7, and I still couldn't have been more wrong.
And I thought Carolina was going to do to the Florida Panthers what they did to New Jersey. And they tried to.
Yeah.
And it turns out Florida just refuses to be pushed around like the New Jersey Devils kind of were in that series. I'm not knocking the team, but they got pushed around a little bit in that series. And the Florida Panthers just said, no, thank you. Rad Koguta said, no, thank you.
This team, the thing that's incredible about this team is that it's how many different heroes, how many different storylines, the comeback from round 1, and then everything else that goes into it.
And now it's the Tkachuk and Bobrovsky
show. It is a little bit, but I turned around and one of the little reels I made after the series was over was this is a team full of moments, and just start counting them down from, Bobrovsky comes in game 4 to start anyway, comes in as the starter in game 4 of the first round. In game 5, they're down to it. It could be over with one chance, and Marchand gets a breakaway at the end of regulation. Bobrovsky makes the save. Tkachuk scores in overtime. Game 6, the back and forth craziness. They go down 5-4. Tkachuk comes right back with another goal. Here's where we start getting real moments, though. Like not that the Tkachuk moments aren't real moments, but he's a star player. You lean on your stars, obviously, right? But here's where you start picking out these moments. Eetu Luostarinen with a game winner in game 6 to get it to game 7. Then in game 7, you're down to a minute to go. Brandon Montour again, who had already scored a few big goals in the series, gets you another big goal before Carter Verhaeghe gets another series winner. And then you move on to the next round, and it's, again, is Tkachuk a big part of it? Sure. And Sam Reinhart had an overtime goal against Toronto. But you want to go to the real one? Go to game 5 when they clinch the series, and who scores the game-winning goal in overtime that time? Nick Cousins. It's not Kachuk. It's not
Flyers
Verhaeghe, it's not
legend.
Markov. It's not one of those guys. It's Nick Cousins.
Flyers / Nashville Predators legend.
And then, yes, you go to this round, and it's a bunch of moments for Matthew Kachuk, of course. But
Okay. Well, but as you get deeper, the spotlight shines brighter, and they're the only game on
and
these.
You need your stars. Yeah.
And you're playing one of the most well-constructed rosters we've seen out of the Cap era. You can say what you want about the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I certainly give them their flowers. But in terms of roster construction, the Carolina Hurricanes have to be up there. Like, they have put together an incredible team. So. This entire run out of them was still without Svechnikov and Pacioretty, wow. Like, so if this team manages to re-sign Sebastian Aho, they're going to be a problem for years.
Sure. So as I'm following along with game one of this series, and following, hours go by, and I'm following. But you're going through this game, and yes, it's 2-2, and it's close. And I kind of figured it was going to be a close series. That's why I picked a 7-game series to begin with.
By the way, game one went to 4 overtimes. I don't know if we've mentioned that.
Literally down to the final 13 seconds.
Almost 5, dude.
So
I thought, yeah.
Okay, here's how close it was to the 5th overtime, just for context then. I had typed out on my phone the tweet that said,
down to 5.
Keith Primo watches on.
Oh, so you were still up. You still watched.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, can I tell you when I bailed?
When did you bail?
About 6 minutes before the goal.
Not bad, though. You hung on for a while.
Well, I do also get the benefit of Central Standard Time. It was only about 12:15 here, 12:30. But yeah, I finally tapped out, and then I woke up the next morning and went, "Oh, it finished like 10 minutes later. That's disappointing." Like, I wish I had just stayed up and watched it.
Well, and here's the thing. So I almost missed the goal because in the final 20 seconds, it looked like they were just going to basically skate around in a circle to get to the intermission, because it just felt that way. And of course, there was a turnover in the process that leads to the goal anyway. Yep. And so, by the way, obviously you ended up eventually seeing the highlight of the goal if you didn't see it live.
Yeah.
Kind of funny to me how we're looking down the same end of the ice as Primo scored, and it's not that far from the spot where he scored, and it was short side high. Like, it was all very relative to that, except for being in the 5th overtime.
We just needed Jim Jackson on the call, because that call is iconic.
You had him at the Florida games in the first round. That's true. You know, sometimes it doesn't all line.
He had the opportunity.
But either way, when it gets to that point, but that's how far along I was into it. There's 30 seconds left in the 4th overtime.
You're typing out your after overtime tweet.
Well, I'm typing out. We're on Keith Primo watch officially. Yep. We're going to the 5th overtime, and let's be real about when you go to the 5th overtime, because the last example we have of this was the Braden Point with the Tampa Bay Columbus game, right?
Yep.
And that one came up about a minute and a half short of where Keith Primo scored. Like, it was something right there. It was almost to the point where it was going to pass to go longer than that.
This game, by the way, was, I think, the 5th or 6th longest game in history.
6th longest game in history.
But if you get into that 5th overtime, you start climbing the list pretty quick.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, and so, but here's my thought though. Once Florida won that game and got the first one and was up 1-0, but didn't just get the first one, because it would have been one thing if they win the first one 3-2 and it's a regulation game and it's like, okay, whatever. No, they won it in 4 overtimes, nearly 4 full overtimes.
A marathon.
I knew the series was over.
Oh yeah.
Like, I just knew, like, it's so hard to come back from that mentally when you're on the other side. You pour so much into Carolina. The game, right? And you pour so much into it, and then come up basically, yes, it's just one game, but it's a lot spent that in a game that isn't a win.
I do also want to mention the goal that almost counted in the first. I think it was the first overtime. That ended up getting called back.
Yes.
And probably 6,000 or 7,000 Carolina Hurricane fans got up and left as soon as the puck went in.
No.
I understand, but I don't blame them, because, like, the puck goes in. If I'm there, I'm up and gone, because I totally understand. But then, man, you got to be halfway out the building, and you go, the goal is under review. And you, what?
Yeah. By the way, the funnier part to me about that wasn't the fans up and leaving and then coming back in. It was the part where that gets waved off. I think it was 2:46 into overtime or something.
It was quick.
The first overtime.
And then you're there all night.
You're there for the rest of the night. like you're sitting here thinking, oh, okay, yeah, typical overtime. It doesn't last that long. Okay,
If you had plans after the game, cancel them, kids.
Yeah, for real. Like you were halfway out the door to maybe go to the bar, and then you turned back around. And next thing you know, you realized,
you were already texting your buddies like, "Oh, get me around. I'll be there in 10."
Yeah, for real. So yeah, no, and Tkachuk with the goal there, and once it got down to that point, and like we already brought it up, but to have 3 game winners in just the conference final, the overtime game, or not overtime, but 3 game winners, 2 in overtime in the conference final.
Insane.
Is just crazy. Now, I had a couple of question marks in here for a couple of things because, okay, Tkachuk got the game winner in the series clincher in game 4, and they were on the power play. Any thoughts on the call there? Because I kind of had, it's not that it wasn't a penalty, it was just they had let a little bit go earlier, and to me, if that's a tripping penalty at the end of game 4, then I don't care that the stick hit Shane Gostisbehere in the visor at the end of game 3. It was still a penalty.
Right.
And you have the reason, and you have a reason to call it if you're going to call that penalty with a minute left in regulation of game 4 also. That's all I'm saying about that.
So you're not trying to imply that the NHL always has consistent officiating, are you?
Oh, no, and what I'm trying to do is talk about how, once again, something overshadowed something a little bit. Look, Tkachuk is still
I don't think it did.
But okay, you know what was more debatable than the penalty portion of that? It was whether or not there was goalie interference on it, because that was a lot more
Fair
debatable.
enough.
And look, it helped matters that when you went back to the studio once it was all said and done, that you had a future Hall of Fame goaltender sitting on the panel who could tell you how it feels, I guess, if you got a stick in between your pads in the middle of trying to move and push off from your left to your right and tell you, it is what it is. Now, in fairness, he didn't hook his pads. He didn't poke at anything, but it's there. And,
there's obstruction.
There's obstruction. You also have, the defenseman's coming in from the side, kind of sliding in. So it's a lot of chaos going on. So you you figured the call was going to end up standing, but you're looking right at it and seeing there's a stick there. And it's like, it couldn't just be straight up a clean goal. We got to have this too. Like, it's always something with this, but
fair.
But still the team that came out and ultimately found a way to win 4 games, as close as it gets. Oh, by the way, the 1-0 game in game 3, the first career playoff shutout for Sergei Bobrovsky, which sounds it sounds unreal, right?
Yeah.
It was just that kind of series where, it just progressively went lower too. You went 3-2, 2-1. Oh, by the way, can we go to the 2-1 game for a minute? Because Tkachuk scores in overtime there too. And yes, I know, same kind of concept. The celebration was great. Let's get off the ice.
Fantastic.
Bussin' 10, which Bussin' 10's got to be on a T-shirt somewhere. It's got to.
If they do the thing, it'll be on T-shirts at the parade for sure.
Probably, but. Can we go to Alexander Barkov's goal that tied that game? Because that might be one of the best goals. And I know you didn't see it because you're not on Twitter, but I tweeted something out afterwards. Did it remind you of anything? Did watching that Alexander Barkov goal remind you of any particular goal that we should remember from somewhat recent memory?
What's that? I can't think of it off the top of my head.
I remember a game in April 2018, I believe, where a particular Philadelphia Flyer got a breakaway in overtime and faked between the legs also and went backhand.
Right.
It looked a lot like it, did it not?
It did.
But still, there is another element to, in the playoffs, we're further into the playoffs, so you're in the conference finals. You're playing a team that was the best in the East outside of Boston. So the second best team in the league in the entire season is who you're playing, with a defense that is as stacked as it gets in terms of personnel. And you still had the frame of mind to go, you know what I can do when it gets to me all alone in front? I'm pulling it between my legs. And nope, never mind. I'm going back and I'm going backhand.
Yep.
Crazy. What a skill play. And boy, did he come out in this series in terms of being exactly what kind of player he is, the Selke-worthy player that he is.
He's warming up. And if you look at it, the Florida Panthers sit here and they've gone through the top 3 teams in the East. So and if you remember going into the
1, 2, and 4.
Okay, sure.
In the league.
And if you remember going into the postseason, what was the narrative? Oh, the East is just so much better. The West might be a little more competitive, but the East is way more top heavy, way more dominant. And the 8 seed is here. And the 8 seed is here.
And I hear you. It does bring me back to what we said on the last show after the second round. Once they got, because getting through Boston was remarkable. It just felt and down 3-1 and all that.
And then
stuff.
Getting through Toronto was hilarious.
Well, yes, but at the same time, the other part of getting through Toronto is that it made, at least for me, it made me go back and go, maybe we just kind of glossed over the fact that this team won the President's Trophy a year earlier.
I was going to say, if I told you,
they were really good.
If I told you in September, hey, the Florida Panthers are in the conference finals, and Sergei Bobrovsky is playing some of the best hockey of his career, and they're about to sweep the Carolina Hurricanes, you would have looked at me and been like, okay, yeah, I mean, they probably got a little better, but because preseason they were the reigning President's Trophy winners, and this team that had made the not Jonathan Marchessault.
The Matthew Tkachuk for Jonathan Huberdeau.
Jonathan Huberdeau trade. And yeah, they traded away Mackenzie Weegar, but that's okay because and here we are, and we're a little surprised, but we're only surprised because of the regular season, right? We all knew that they made that move to get tougher in the playoffs, to have a little bit more edge to them. And who has been their best skater in these playoffs? Matthew Tkachuk.
The guy they got. Yeah, Bang. The guy that they got.
Bang. All right. I think that puts a nice little wrap on the Eastern Conference here. We ready to switch over and talk about the West?
By the way, here's the real nice wrap, by the way. So you just mentioned they beat number 1, number 2, and number 4 in the league. Guess who number 5 is?
Man, Florida Panthers are going to run the gauntlet here if they want to win this.
If they do, they've gone through the best of the best, no matter what. Because
they can't put an asterisk on it.
No. Because they couldn't. Because the other part is they couldn't play 1, 2, and 3 because 2 and 3 played each other.
Yep.
So they couldn't do that. So they did the next best thing, which is they beat the better of the 2.
Though you cannot put any sort of asterisk on what the Florida Panthers have done at this point. So out in the West here, this series didn't have the courtesy of ending in 4, so we could actually record our show in our normal Sunday morning time slot. Instead, the Dallas Stars extended the series after being down 3-0. They won Game 4. They won Game 5. We'll talk about Jamie Benn in a second. Yeah, Jamie Benn returns for Game 6, and they lose. So just as a quick stat before we get into Jamie Benn here, they were 0-4 with him and 2-0 without him.
Well, what I was gonna say is at least they had the courtesy to end it in Game 6, so we weren't recording tonight on like a cliffhanger.
We weren't recording a what if show.
Yeah, I didn't want to do that, and I was kind of not disappointed to see the 3-0 lead after the first period.
3-0, which turned into 4-0, 5-0, 6-0. Yeah, Game 6, the Dallas Stars really did run out of steam, but so Vegas came out and just kind of ground out 3 wins in the first couple of games. Dallas just looked a little flat, to be honest.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Game 3 because that's kind of where this series earned its merit as a playoff series.
Yeah, because the whole Jamie Benn thing is half the story with this series. So
exactly. So the Vegas Golden Knights are up 2-0. We're going back to Dallas. Game 3 starts. Vegas scores right away. Within about a minute and a half, Vegas is up 1-0.
Mm-hmm.
And Jamie Benn, as he has been known to do from time to time in his career, has his wires crossed. And he just kind of attacks Mark Stone. And the thing that really crossed the line is after he knocked him down, Stone's lying prone on the ice, and Jamie Benn, just clear as day, cross-checks him in the side of the head.
Right, like it's
very clearly as hard as he can.
It should be noted that the first half of what goes on there's nothing wrong with. It's a contact play, and he falls over. There's nothing wrong with that part of it. But then
it's a battle in a playoff game.
And Jamie Benn's reasoning behind it was, I was falling and I fell on my stick. Which there was intent there.
So
I clear intent because he cross-checked him basically across the neck.
So I said this in the group chat after that discussion, but so Jamie Benn didn't speak to the media the night of the game. So he got kicked out of the game. It was a 5 in a game. He refused to speak to the media after the game. He left immediately after the game was over. The next day, I believe it was right after his hearing with the league.
Probably.
I think he talked to the league. He talked to the media, and then the suspension came out.
Yeah, something
So
like
he
that.
comes out and says, I fell, and it's unfortunate that I used my stick as a landing point, or something along those lines.
Do you know what's funny about that? To bring the unfortunate play line into it, to be honest, my first thought when he said that, or when I heard that that's what he said, was you were direct witness to the true definition of unfortunate play in game 1 of the playoffs, because the unfortunate was, okay, Matt Dumba and Joe Pavelski. Was it probably a little late so you could call interference? Sure, but he's just throwing a shoulder hit that knocks them over, and then he hits his head on the ice. That's unfortunate. He's not intentionally trying to knock his head to the ice. He's trying to lay a hit. Was it a little late? Sure. But is he doing it to lay a...
They benefited from that, so it's...
No, I know, but you know what I mean. But it's like, that's an unfortunate... Well, because then after that, the rest of the series is affected because Pavelski didn't return for the rest of the series.
I agree.
So that's an unfortunate play. Not, I took my stick and I cross-checked the guy across the neck.
I said in the group chat that is the least sorry I have ever seen a professional athlete after a questionable hit. Because all he has to do, in the court of public opinion, he might not win over a lot of fans, but all he has to do is come out and say, it was an unfortunate play. It got the best of me. I'm glad Mark's okay. Right. That's all he has to say. And everyone goes, all right, well... You got angry. You were kind of a jerk. Okay, fine. But he said what he said. He said, I fell and used my stick as a landing ball. And all I wanted was for a 20-game suspension. You're not sorry.
One thing I would love to see is, and I don't know if we'll get this or not, I hope we potentially do, is whenever the next episode of Quest for the Cup comes out and they show you, I guess, the handshakes and all that stuff, I would love to know what was said, because they had a long conversation.
I'm sure they did. Yeah, it's the two captains.
And Stone looked very cordial about it. So I just wonder if something was...
Well, he won. Of course he is.
No, I know, but it didn't seem like... It just didn't seem like it was done like... with hostility towards what had happened. It felt like there was some amend making going on in some way there. I'm sure I would like to think anyway that Jamie Benn is the type of person, and listen, there's a lot of, well, not just to apologize, but to look at somebody like Mark Stone, who also has not won in his career, and acknowledge, like, go get you one. Like, you're a really good player. Go get you one here. You know,
Right. And so I'm going to ask you what you think about the punishment itself, because we talked about it a little bit in the group chat, and you drew a comparison to the Alex Pietrangelo situation from the second round. And,
in terms of I wasn't expecting much.
Well, and you said we have precedent. Intent to injure is 1 game in these playoffs. And the suspension
directly in these playoffs, yes.
Well, right. And the suspension comes out and it's 2. And I think the difference was the head contact, to be honest.
Probably, but like...
the fact that Alex Pietrangelo just chopped Leon Draisaitl across the arm.
But even then, and we had a discussion last week about this, and and it's funny, we argued the exact same thing, which was, okay, listen, if you want to, at the end of the game, give Darnell Nurse the 1 game for jumping into fight after or for getting an instigation penalty in the final 5 minutes, then fine. But then give Pietrangelo 2, and then guess what? The suspensions would have matched.
Right. And in this case, they did not match. Obviously, Ben got 2 games. Dallas came out and won the 2 games without him. Because, quite frankly, after he got kicked out of Game 3, obviously the Stars had to kill off a 5-minute power play, and I believe Vegas scored at least 1 on that. Did they not?
Vegas scored 1 and then scored right after it was
right
over.
After it ended. Right, that's what happened.
Before it was the game wasn't 7 minutes old, and it was 3-0, and you knew it was over. So that was my first part of the problem. Was he directly affected Game 3 with the match penalty?
Not just affected. You threw Game 3 down the drain.
Well, I have those words later.
Right, you're down 1-0. If you lay a hard, clean hit on Mark Stone, that can get your team fired up. That can get you back in the game. Instead, your wires crossed. You took a stupid penalty. Your team went down a man for 5 full minutes, gave up a goal there, and then gave up a goal right after. Now you're down 3-0, less than halfway through the first period. Jamie, hello.
I'm trying to remember because the final of that game was 4-0. So yes, I think that actually once that third goal went in, they changed goalies too. So like that, it's disastrous to go into a game like that, give up a goal early, and you give up a goal early for no reason. Like there's no specifics behind. Like there are obviously, but it's not like it was a penalty. It's not like it was this happened and then they scored. You had done it. You were already up to a slow start with the 1-0, and then the penalty, another goal short order after it's all over, and the goalie's
drain. Yep, you decided to just kick any shot at Game 3 down the drain.
but here's my reasoning for calling it half the story, though, because okay, he directly affects, and game 3 becomes that throwaway because of it. By being suspended for the next 2, the rest of the team looks like they're playing to get him back.
Yep.
They're playing two really good games to make sure with this,
Well,
make sure his suspension is not what does them completely in, that they're still alive.
And here's
and
where
then
I'm
they
at
let
on,
it. Then
Yep.
they lay another egg in game 6.
And here's where I'm at on Jamie Benn, and I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier with my joke about being 0-4 with him and 2-0 without him. But, because you didn't really have him in game 3, but whatever. Anyway.
Right.
In game 6, I know that you're kind of out of gas. And I know that Vegas has been a better team over the course of this series. You dug this hole in games 1, 2, and 3. It wasn't a problem in game 6 specifically. The Dallas Stars were just out of gas. Mm-hmm. But the performance was lifeless.
Yeah.
They looked like a team. If they looked like a team that was playing to get Jamie Benn back in games 4 and 5, they were playing like a team that didn't like him in game 6. And I don't know if Jamie Benn loses the C. I don't know how much sway he has in that locker room. But I feel like this playoff series is the kind of thing that has gotten captaincy stripped before.
I don't think that he's going to get stripped of the captaincy per se, because the fact that, and this was my response, because you put this out there, like this was part of the group chat kind of stuff, and you put that out there, and I even said, well, gee, for the defense tour that they all just went on, I kind of find it hard to believe you would do something like that when you talk it up like that. Like that sounds like it just leads to more problems.
But you have to defend your guy when you're in battle.
Well, which is why my bigger question is, what's his future like in Dallas overall? Because remember, this is a team, for me anyway, that I praised heavily because of the way that it was built. They had a huge draft in 2017. They've got other key draft pieces that have worked out. They've also acquired a ton of these pieces as well, like Pavelski and all stuff like that.
And Jamie Benn was a great regular season asset this year. Mm-hmm. He was fantastic in the regular season. He looked like Jamie Benn of 10 years ago.
Sure, and sticking it out with Ben and Sagan and getting through kind of a retooling on the fly kind of process is exactly what you would want to see. But you almost wonder if there's something.
But what kind of message is he sending your kids? What kind of message
is
he sending Miro Heiskanen? Yeah.
If there's something that's going to give out of it, it's going to be interesting. Now, the last line I have because I want to get to Vegas because they're the team that obviously we're going to talk about. But the last line I have on Dallas was, not many teams are going to win a series where you throw 2 games completely away. Like, if you have, look, very competitive games 1 and 2, overtime again. Which, by the way, how much fun was that? For the first 4 nights of both series, you're going, okay, game 1, game 2, game 2, and it's overtime every night.
Yep.
It was actually a little, and then the funny part is you get to game 3 of the Carolina-Florida series, and Florida's up 1-0 late, and you're sitting there going, is it going to happen?
Carolina's going to score, right?
Is it going to happen again? And then finally, then game 3 of this one came along and ruined it all. But I
came so close to live betting overtime in the middle of that third period. Oh.
But either way, so that all of that said about the Dallas side of things, props to Vegas. There's going to be, there's going to be a lot of discussion about Mark Stone, how he didn't play for the last half of the season and was ready to return for the playoffs, and what
again,
that does, and when the cap is no longer a thing and all that stuff. But he's always been a great leader in my eyes.
Yep.
The rest of their depth is just outstanding.
Yep.
Look at Game 6 as the best example of it in the early stages. And I wrote down William Karlsson here, and William Karlsson did score a goal and all of that. Don't get me wrong, but if you're the opening statement of Game 6, it's not Jonathan Marchessault, so it's not Karlsson, it's not Riley Smith again, it's not Eichel or Stone or Chandler Stevenson, it's William Carrier and Keegan Colasar that are scoring goals and making an impact. That is tough to beat in the playoffs.
Well, and you have Jack Eichel, who looks like he's trying to remind you of the prospect that went right behind Connor McDavid in 2015. Mm-hmm. Jack Eichel is happy playing hockey again. And here's the thing. Do you know exactly how bad Buffalo sucks? Think about...
I kind of do, obviously. But
Ryan O'Reilly, Jack Eichel, everybody. You leave Buffalo. If you don't like being in Buffalo, go somewhere else. Because
hang on a second. Do you want to go to the other side? Sam Reinhart, Brandon Montour, they were former Buffalo Sabres as well. Like, there's kind of a theme here.
Jason Botterill built a lot of this Stanley Cup Final.
His fingerprints are all over the winner one way or the other.
They
right?
sure are. But all right, so we do have Vegas coming through. They're rolling at this point. They obviously they took advantage of a Dallas team that kind of ran out of gas a little bit. But now, credit to them for keeping their foot on.
Well, and I want to add another name to the whole thing here, who deserves a lot of credit. Let's give Aiden Hill a ton of credit as well, because
I was about to mention that they've gotten some great goaltending.
Well, because here's the thing, and Hill is probably overlooked a lot because, let's face it, you start your career in Arizona, and then you go to San Jose for a year, and then you don't even really get on the radar in Vegas in your first year there because
he's the third or fourth goalie on the chart.
Because Logan Thompson, Laurent Brossoit, then they acquire Jonathan Quick, and you're thinking the guys beyond this never play.
And if you go back far enough, Robin Lehner, like they got him because as part of the issue when Robin Lehner went down, like Aiden Hill was never meant to be starting games for Vegas.
But But here is Aiden Hill, goalie number 4, and he's also got the team 4 wins away from a Stanley Cup. I love it. Now, I know we are going to probably we're going to start to transition to the preview of the actual final. But before we do that, and I kind of, you mentioned this to me like right before we started recording, and I do want to get in this because this is kind of overall playoff thoughts. And I just kind of had a few things that I wanted to I don't want to get up on a soapbox and do this, but I also wanted to, because every year we get to this point, we're in the playoffs, the conference finals, and we usually have, we have a blast doing these shows because we get to talk about the fun stuff and watching these games. And there have been some great games, don't get me wrong. But this year I don't feel as good as I did in other recent years. And I think the bubble was good just because it was something. It wasn't the same Stanley Cup playoff as it usually is, but we also didn't have sports for 3 to 4 months. So it was like we welcomed
and we had nothing else to do. So.
Right. We welcomed anything. 2021, more normal, and watching the Tampa Bay Lightning win in a full building again, that's thrilling. It was cool.
Really neat.
There were a lot of
boat parade.
There were a lot of moments for that team as well on their way. Like that was good. And last year I felt like the action was just really good. You had a lot of long series, you had a lot of close games, lots of overtime. It was all really fun. And then this year, while I think you've gotten the share of the close games and you've had long series, there's been something lacking. And maybe it's the fact that there's been more discussion than ever about penalties and player safety and missed calls and this and that, and it takes away from the game a little bit. But that's not what what really does it for me. I think that stuff like that happens every year, and you either live with it or you leave. If it bothers you that much, the way that it's called, don't watch it, or go watch another sport and tell me where the same conversation isn't had, in any other sport.
Look at the last play of the Super Bowl.
Well, pretty much, I know. And, but, the first round, I feel like when we did our first show coming out of the first round, when it was all playoffs, I feel like it's exactly what we hoped it would be. We had so much to talk about. All these series are close. All these games, series results, games close. And then the second round, we had a 6-game series and a 7-game series, and at least half of those, but that's good. But half the games in those series weren't even close. They were all blowouts. Right. Well, so you don't want to see that. I don't care if you get 2-1 games or 7-6 games. Competitive in any form is good, but 5-1 and 6-1 on the regular, it's not really successful.
And then you go to this round, and after the first 6 games, both series are 3-0.
Right. And here's the thing. In this round, until Vegas beat Dallas 4-0 in Game 3, you had 5 really close games.
Right.
All decided by one
Several
goal.
overtimes. Right.
But there's still a feeling of being robbed in the Florida Carolina series because it only lasted 4 games. Absolutely. It's a sweep. And look, if you're a Florida fan, you don't care. But you would take the sweep every day, and Vegas didn't exactly do the same. But to be up 3-0, look, you're going to take that if you're a Vegas fan. The games in the conference final may have been great, but the series were terrible from a competitive standpoint. That you want to believe down to the last 4 teams left, it's going to be more competitive than this among these 4. You don't want to see sweeps or 3-0 series leads where what the odds are to get back into it. And
it was pretty disappointing. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm hoping that Florida makes up for it. But or Florida and Vegas make up for it. The final makes up for it.
Florida's not losing a whole lot of hockey games at this point, so I don't know.
Neither is Vegas.
That is true, but. All right, so prediction time here.
Yes, we are on to.
We got two teams left. You got the Florida Panthers over your left shoulder. You got the Vegas Golden Knights over your right shoulder.
They're here.
Kevin, I've already given my prediction away.
Yeah, you did.
I have the Florida Panthers in 6 games. I refuse to root against the Magic at this point. Paul Maurice, Matthew Tkachuk, Sergei Bobrovsky, they're doing it. Kevin.
Root against the Magic. You're going to another city in Florida now. What are you doing? No, I'm just kidding. It was too. You lobbed a softball up there for another joke. Okay,
that's fair.
I'm not going to do it anymore.
Okay, who you got?
I am also taking Florida in 6.
Florida in 6.
Now I guess I'll give my reasoning. I can't pick against this team anymore. It's destiny. It's destiny. They've had so many moments, and they're really just firing on all cylinders right now. And look, Vegas definitely is too. But there's just something. This is something really special happening in Florida right now, and a big reason why I'm saying 6 and not 7, even though once again even though my typical caveat here, like I wouldn't.
It could go either way. Oh yeah,
right, I wouldn't be surprised. Is because actually the reason I'm saying 6, you're saying in Florida, and I'm not disagreeing with that. But the reason I'm saying 6 is because this team plays so well on the road. 3 wins in Boston, 3 wins in Toronto, 2 in Carolina. They're 8-1 in the playoffs on the road and have won 7 straight games, like 7 straight road games anyway. So that's the reason, because I think that from day one of this on Saturday, when game 1 is underway, I think that once again, this team is out to just show you being on the road to start a series does not matter to them. And if for some reason they win both of the first 2, then look, I still hold by the 6 thing because I think that Vegas will still give a push, especially in game 3, I would imagine. But let's not forget also that this is a team that the last time and the only other time they made the Stanley Cup Final, they didn't win. They didn't win anything. They got swept.
I got it.
What's that?
I know how this series is going to go.
How is this series going to go?
They're going to split the first 2.
Okay.
Sergei Bobrovsky's going to get shelled in game 3.
And they're going to win 3 straight?
Alex Lyon wins them 4, 5, and 6.
No, it's never going to happen that way.
Count it.
Here's the thing. I actually don't hate your progression game by game. I just don't think it's going to be Alex Lyon, but...
You heard it here first, kids.
That's funny.
All right.
But I do like that. So now, granted, in the middle of all this, because we're talking Sergei Bobrovsky for a second, things I just can't wait to hear a million times during the Stanley Cup Final are that, all the revisionist history about what ifs if the Flyers had kept Bobrovsky. Let's not forget
that had him as a prospect.
Hold on. Let's not forget that the trade was to Columbus, not Florida, by the way. That was a decade ago. It's been a decade, and until this season, he hadn't won anything in the playoffs. And by the way,
he did pick up a Vezina or 2. Though,
in the playoffs.
I understand, but he didn't win nothing.
No, I'm just talking about playoff success.
I know.
Like the Vezinas were one thing, and I get it. He became the best goalie in the league, but never won in the playoffs. So, except for maybe a round, But by the way, and I don't mean to do this, and I'm not trying to take the low-hanging fruit, but I feel like this is something that's going to come. I'm saying this is going to be something that comes up probably. This is why I have it written down, because I wouldn't be surprised how many times we hear this. Does anyone wonder what Claude Giroux thinks of all this? Having been on this team a year ago and going for the purpose of... Yeah, kind of, right? Like, don't get me wrong. I'm sure that thought... the thought crossed my mind. And
that thought is so petty, and I love it.
No, and maybe that's more the recency of it. Like, he was on the team in last year's playoffs, but he's moved on. He chose his destination. It is what it is. Like, we don't need to harp on these, like, kind of tired storylines here. You want to talk about what's going on now and stuff like that.
That is so petty.
All right, so we did
all of it.
So we did series predictions. Do you want to get into Conn Smythe stuff really quick?
Yeah, I think we'd hit a little Conn Smythe prediction, and then we're about to get out of here. Yeah, absolutely. So we both have Florida winning. I don't think anyone on the Vegas Golden Knights has put up a big enough resume where they win the Conn Smythe if they lose. Is that fair to say? It's pretty tough to do that.
That's fair to say. No, I do have answers for if Vegas were to win, who I think would get it, but
But let's start with Florida because we do both have the Florida Panthers. I think there's the two obvious names. Now, do you want to take one of those two names, or okay? I'll give you a little golf bet terminology here. Are you taking Bobrovsky / Tkachuk, or are you taking the field for the Florida Panthers specifically?
No, I'm taking Bobrovsky / Tkachuk.
Okay, and now among those two, who are you giving it to?
So after last round, I was convinced if it was Florida, it had to be Bobrovsky. There was no other choice.
Yep.
Matthew Tkachuk is firmly in that race now. It's very much neck and neck as they come into this Stanley Cup Final. I think look, if it's going to come down to they have to win it to have one of these two win the trophy, which it's not always the case, but if it comes down to that, which I think it still will, like if Vegas ends up winning, I think someone from Vegas wins the trophy.
Okay.
But if it comes down to Florida has to win it, then Bobrovsky's going to already have done enough to have won it potentially, like just by winning, right? By putting him in a position to win 4 more games, he'll have already done enough. So I think it depends on the type of series that Tkachuk has in terms of if Florida wins and Tkachuk is just kind of like okay by the numbers and not like as standout, then I think Bobrovsky will get it. But if
Tkachuk scores the cup-winning goal, he's getting it.
My answer is if Tkachuk continues to have these massive moments and scores if he scores 3 goals in the series, 3 or 4 goals in the series, and one of them is the cup clincher, I don't know how you don't give it to him.
And there's a certain betting website in Canada that had a series goals prop bet for Matthew Tkachuk at 4.5.
For this upcoming series, you're saying?
And the over got pounded so hard that they changed it to 5.5.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's how many goals I think he's scoring. I mean, look, I'm not surprised by it, but I took the conservative number. I said 3 to 4 for that reason.
So did you have a name out of Vegas?
Yeah, I have a couple. I still think that Jack Eichel's probably the go-to guy for this. He's been thriving in this setting.
Aiden Hill's giving himself a run though.
Well, I have a comment on Aiden Hill about it, but like I understand where you're coming from with it. But like Eichel's been thriving in this setting, being in the playoffs for the first time, by the way, being near the mountaintop of the hockey world. I do think in the last series in particular, maybe tail end of the second round and most of the conference final, I do think that both Marchessault and Karlsson have started to enter the conversation because they're really piling up some numbers right now.
William Karlsson is starting to,
And is it not feeling a little bit like 6 years ago?
It feels a little bit like 41 goal Wild Bill Karlsson going on.
Yeah. I hear you on Aiden Hill. It won't be a goalie for me. It won't be Aiden Hill even though Aiden Hill's been great. He didn't come into the picture soon enough to probably be in the running. Like I just think
I get that.
I think the body of work, like it'd be one thing if I was still sitting here going, I guess Eichel because I don't know, and Marchessault and Karlsson don't have entry in the conversation. Like I think all three are really good in the conversation, and I think because of that, there's too many players. Like if you recall one of our earlier shows, I had Eichel and Mark Stone in there just because Stone came back, and it was like, look at the impression he's leaving on the rest of the team.
He was spectacular through the first round,
and he was really good in the first round, but then like he's not the main guy anymore.
No,
Eichel's still doing it. But man, Marchessault and Karlsson have been putting up some numbers in these last 2 rounds that make me start to think it might be one of them.
That OG Golden Knights line just never fails, man. That has been one of the most reliable trios. They haven't always been a line, but one of the most reliable trios in hockey for the last more than a half decade.
And aren't they just fun to watch? Like that group, the fact that they're still together. I mean, when you lump them in with everybody else that they've got, and I mean, like,
well, right. And if you think about all the turbulence surrounding the Vegas Golden Knights in terms of the roster turnover and the coach changes and this, that, the other, those three are just rock solid, steady guys. Here they are.
I mean, it's incredible, and again, you get a really good coaching matchup out of this final. Also, I don't want to gloss over that. What? By the way, do you think it's ironic at all? Like, I found it ironic anyway, or slightly ironic, that Paul Maurice is coaching in Florida, and this comes 1 year after he said, I can't go any further with Winnipeg, can't do anything more with these guys. And then, in the same year that Bonus is telling you, they didn't,
no pushback.
No pushback at the end of the series.
Turns out it might be the guys.
Right. So, and then Paul Maurice gets here, and look what happens,
And he also gets the ultimate pushback player because Matthew Tkachuk is the ultimate pushback player.
And similarly, like on the other side, when you go to Vegas and it's Bruce Cassidy over there, and it's like, listen, and I saw this the other day. Like, it's no secret that there was not, like, we've talked about this before when we talked about Boston. It's no secret that there was, some dislike between players and coach in Boston when Cassidy was still there. But look, the dude's a good coach. I mean, he's a really good coach. To do this again with a new team, first year, in a way, this was kind of we kind of telegraphed this series a little bit as an option, because we kept sitting here saying, what if it's Boston, right? What if instead of Florida coming out of that first round matchup, it's Boston? They go all the way through, they get here, and it's Vegas on the other side, and it's the Bruins against Bruce.
Yep.
What if that's what it is? And
instead, we have the Destiny team.
Well, Bruce Cassidy's there, but Destiny is getting in the way, and I can't wait to see what becomes of this, because I just hope that we continue to get the close the close game and the close games.
I hope we get a close series, because we didn't get a whole lot of close series in this round. But
I don't want to be going into that first. Well, not, I guess it's not the first. Realistically, I guess the second Saturday game 4, that would be
right.
I don't want to be going into game 4 and already thinking about
where the parade. Yep.
Yep.
And the only thing we can do now is kind of sit back and watch the games. We got it. Game 1 is Saturday night. We're recording this on Tuesday night. I imagine it's going out Wednesday morning.
Yep.
Got a couple of days. Game 1, it's going to be really exciting. We're going to see some high level hockey. The whole series is on the TNT TBS family. It's not going to be on ESPN, so make sure you go check it out over there. And speaking of things you check out, you should check us out on Twitter at YWT Podcast. Follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find us anywhere you find your podcast: Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, SportsTalkPhilly.com. We are everywhere, and we will be back after this. Our next show is going to be your Stanley Cup Final wrap show. It's probably also going to be a draft preview show, quite frankly. So
we will figure out exactly when we do this, but yes,
we will have a lot going on over the next 2 or 3 shows. So make sure to subscribe to us, drop a like wherever you need to, and get us back in your inbox, because we're coming with some good stuff over the next couple of months. So until then, see ya.